It's time to take your business to the next level, the boss level. These are the premier business owner strategies and successes being utilized by the industry's top talent today. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss. Now let's welcome your host, Ann Ganguzza.
Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguzza, and I'm here today with the one and only audio tech guru, Mr. Tim Tippets. I'm so excited to have you here, Tim, and I'm going to miss you when you're not with me anymore. Just saying.
Oh, that's sweet.
True. It's true.
Very sweet.
Well, you know, our last episode, Tim, we talked about some top, what I like to say, some of our top tips, at least for this year, what's on our brains right now, things that can help out our boss listeners out there. And we had so many tips that we decided to do a part 2. So this is going to be the start of our part 2 tip. And I think you wanted to reiterate one of our last tips.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I wanted to qualify something that we were talking about, about overburdening resources. So I have been getting so many emails lately that I've been asking, coaches like yourself, if you refer someone to me, to reach out to me via text. Anyone that I'm working with in real time to reach out to me via text, because I'm getting just absolutely murdered with emails. And so to make sure that I'm not, missing those emails or anything like that. And plus stuff goes into junk mail for no reason.
Sure does.
All sorts of crazy stuff happens. So I just wanted to qualify that for anyone who I have specifically asked, to text me, those statements were not for you. Okay, so just wanted to clear that up.
I think there's always that path when we really, we're really there, want to be there for our students, and we say, yeah, go ahead and text. We wouldn't say that without, meaning that. So
right, exactly,
for sure.
Yeah. So I think when we were finishing up the last round, we were going to get into getting to know your tools very well. I think that's what was up next, okay? And that includes, when we say tools, we're not just talking about your microphone, your interface. We're also talking about software. We're talking about integration of any sort of accounting program you might have.
Absolutely.
And so on. Get to know those things very, very well, because if you don't know them well, a couple of really bad things can happen. One is you are creating a ton of inefficiency. Right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you get back into it and you're like, okay, where was that again? Right? And, who needs that? Right? And also in the middle of a session, we definitely don't need to try to figure out how our mic stand works in order to get it in the right position
or which
or whatever.
Cable goes where. I know that is, when you have to move fast and get yourself back up and running and change out that interface. Oh my gosh. So where does the, is this a USB connection? How is this an XLR cable? What is it and where does it go? In the past, Tim, I used to take pictures because I wasn't familiar. I'm not an audio engineer. So when I got my first piece, my interface and my microphone, I literally took pictures so that I knew where cables went, and I labeled cables and in settings on my interface. That was so important, Tim. I had I worked with an engineer and they said, this is where your input should be, and this is where this should be. And so I took a picture and then saved that picture so that in case, somebody ever moved a knob or, the cat stepped on my audio interface, I knew where that went and where it, where I needed to put it back.
That is super smart. There is an app that I recently got into maybe 3 months ago called Evernote.
Oh, yes.
And you can access it online.
Yep.
You can access it through your tablet, through your phone, etc. What's really cool about this program, if you buy the premium, which I think is, they charge me $7.99 a month or something like that, totally affordable. But what's great about this program is that if I do take a picture of something, and then I put a note underneath it, let's say where that cable goes or whatever. What's great about Evernote is if I put in one word, it's going to bring up everything that I've ever written, every picture that I've ever taken that has to do with that key word.
It's super helpful. Yes.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Absolutely.
And it's no different than when I'm writing melodies for a song, because I compose too. When I'm in the car and I don't have anything to record on, I will open my voice memos and I will hum or sing the part or the drum beat or whatever. And that has been an unbelievable resource for me.
Oh yeah,
to be able
absolutely.
to just go back and, what was that again? Right. So that, and that's a super, super efficient way to keep on track and not have all of your bandwidth taken up, because we live in an age of information overload, as it is between Facebook and Instagram. And for those of you who can't, help but, what's happening right now, on social media, we're already so involved. And I suppose that's another tip, by the way, is to try to stay off of social media as much as possible.
Yeah.
And waste time.
If
it's business, that's
different.
one thing. But it's so easy to get sucked into the social media black hole, right?
Yeah.
That before you know it, you've spent 2 hours in there, and you could be marketing, you could be auditioning, etc.
And lately too, Tim, it's gotten to be a different landscape out there. And I think that, with the times and, the politics and the craziness of the pandemic, it has probably in certain cases not been a good thing for people to be connected to social media because it's affecting their mental health. And their relationships because they are giving their political opinion very forcefully a lot of the times, and creating, you're losing half of your audience right there. Yeah. And so that was a tip that just happened, by the way.
It just now happened, by the way, guys. Yeah, because
this is your other tip.
people have this idea that, people in our business are a certain way politically or whatever, and so they can say whatever it is that they want, and everyone's going to agree with them. I don't talk about my political affiliations, either whether I have them or a lack of them, because, human beings are human beings, right? And that's the way they should be treated. And politics really shouldn't come into play. But the reason that I don't post about politics is because, number one, I'm going to get blowback, okay? And then I need to respond. And after all, it's just an opinion as well, right? And so, on the other end of that too, you kind of need to, when people are giving their opinion, is kind of give them some room, even if it irritates you. They're just, it's freedom of speech, and they're speaking their mind.
We could have a whole podcast about just that.
Yeah, we could.
And technically speaking, I will say a screenshot can be taken at any given time, no matter what group you're in, whether you think it's closed, whether you think it's private, whether you think people can't see, it's all in the ethers. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
And I did that once when we were in a group. I did that once, and right in the middle of stating at any point in time a screenshot, and then I took a screenshot of me saying that, can be posted, and guess what? It lives there forever. Yeah. And I was told, well, this isn't it's not my business page or whatever, so I don't need to worry about it.
Yes.
So I asked the question. Well, have you ever worked with a producer or anyone like that, and you ended up being Facebook friends with them? And they're like, yeah, of course. And I go, well, congratulations, your personal page is now a business page.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, be careful with that stuff.
Good advice. So. Hey, speaking of not knowing where to plug the cable in unless you take a picture, right? And you know your stuff very well, which I think is just know your stuff very well, keep notes on it. But speaking of equipment, right? I think it's also a good thing to really... when you're purchasing equipment for your business, make sure that it's quality equipment. And I know that this may sound like people can say, you can build a home studio for cheap, or you don't have to spend a ton of money on your microphone. But I think we also covered this a little bit in a past episode, Tim, that quality, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, you do. And you should, it's an investment. And I know that we've talked about this before, but just as it is when we're talking about buying a Mac. This is something that people say again and again and again. Buy as much Mac as you can afford at the time, because Macs are notorious for lasting a very long time. I gave my son recently, I gave him my 2013 MacBook Pro, and the thing is still humming along.
Oh, I still have a 2012. That's amazing. Back when they, Tim, by the way, and I wanted to make mention of this when we're talking about hardwiring, back when they actually had an Ethernet port in the MacBook Pros, that was 2012. I think that was the last year that they did that. And then they just started with the new connection, and the Ethernet wasn't as important anymore. Well, I'm here to say it still is very important, and you can buy adapters that have Ethernet connections on them. And that is is something that you still have to go and buy, and that is your quality equipment that's going to have you, that's going to help you have a quality connection to the internet and to your clients, and thus deeming success all around.
Yeah, and not to sound like a fanboy of Macs, because I am, and I used to build monster
and I'm a
PCs.
fangirl.
Yeah, and I used to build monster PCs, and I get it. You can't change things out and all that, but it's made my life so much easier to just have the integration. Yeah, between my iPad, my iPhone, and everything just works and it's dependable, etc. But the Thunderbolt 3 technology is way faster than the USB-C technology. And even though they're the same cable, the technology itself is 4 times faster, the Thunderbolt 3, than its nearest competitor. Okay, so when we're talking about porting out into Ethernet or to hard drives and whatnot, the capabilities that the Macs now have are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, when I'm rendering video out of this program, After Effects, I have here on my desktop a 2015 5K 27-inch Mac, which is still running just fine, and it's got 40 gigs of memory. It's great. I bought a 2019 MacBook Pro, 16 gigs. When I'm porting out into my hard drive and I'm rendering, it just kicks my desktop's butt. I mean, that's
I know.
That's how much these things improve over time. It's amazing.
I think we're like soul brothers and sister here, because when we're talking about buy the quality equipment that you can when you're starting out. I mean, it doesn't stop with my microphone or my interface. It goes right to my computer, because again, that's it's also hosting my accounting software. It's also hosting my Zoom connections. That computer. So the better. The more that I'm investing in my computer, the faster it runs, the better it runs, the better connectivity, the more dependable it will be. And it just all around, I'll be able to be more efficient in running my business. So
the same can be said for microphones and other equipment. You might see someone say, hey, the preamps on this less expensive interface are, just as clean as the ones on this more expensive interface. And so why wouldn't you buy that? Well, for the same reason that I only buy Mogami cables. So, I pay $60 for a 10-foot or 15-foot Mogami, cable, but it's quad shielded. Right. I've got one here that I've had for 12 years now. Right. And I said this before in a previous podcast about I'd rather pay, twice as much for a cable that's going to last 4 times longer. But the same can be said for an interface, for instance. So let's say that the preamps are just as clean in the $150 version versus the $600 or $500 version. However, my last Apollo that I had, I left on literally more than 99.9% of the time.
I remember you telling me
turning it off. Yeah, not turning it off. Okay, and that Apollo Twin just hummed along for 7 years without giving me any problems whatsoever. Okay. My 2i2, the first one that I bought, within the first 4 months, had to turn it in for repair. Okay, nothing against them. Okay, because the 2i2 is a great option for starting out.
Sure is.
It's affordable, etc. But that being said, if you can afford to get yourself some really good equipment up front, again, we're not talking about going out and buying a U87 and filling your studio with the highest quality equipment possible, because if you're new to this game, maybe you do that if you're a pro and you've been around for a while. Exactly.
But
if you're new to this game,
and you're not sure that you're going to stay in the game.
Yeah. Well, because you never know. I mean, this is a results-based business. You don't know what the trajectory is going to be exactly until you get things such as the market giving you feedback on the type of work that it wants from you. That alone takes a bit of time to figure out, so that you are auditioning for the right jobs, right? You're going after the right ones because you know what the market wants from you. Okay. So, and as you succeed, as you do begin to understand those things, and you are executing at a higher level because you do have the right equipment and it's lasting and it's not dying in the middle of a session, or you have that backup in place and you've been able to get to that point where you are getting those higher paying jobs. Well, when you do get a $5,000 job, let's say, that would be a good time to go next level on your equipment. Exactly.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it should be. So,
and Speaking of equipment, right?
Yep.
I wanted to touch base about, things that we don't necessarily think about that would really enhance our business in terms of investing in equipment would be, and this I found to really help me, is to invest in a good, add video capabilities to your studio. Because
absolutely,
this allows a connection with your client that, especially now I think is super important when, we're doing a whole lot more from our home studios. And we have clients who may be used to directing us in studios or going to the studio. Now I think it gives an element of trust, right? Because they can see us when we're performing, they can see our face, we can see them. And I think it just sets the tone for a more connected client, business relationship.
It definitely does. I've created relationships with people. Andy is a good example. Andy Field. He and I had gotten to know each other for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or something like that. And we met at VoiceOver Atlanta for the first time ever in person. And it wasn't like this big hug type of thing. Yeah. It was like, hey, man, how are you doing? Because we knew each other so well. It was as if we had been there together in person the entire time. Mm-hmm. So there was no like, hey, it's great to finally get to know you in person, right? And not only that, but we miss so many visual cues when we're communicating.
Oh, isn't that
if we
true?
don't see someone's face. We see this in text all the time. We see it again in social media posts, right? Where what we're reading was not the actual intent, because it's difficult. It's difficult to pick up all of those nuances. So the video thing is great. Love it. Love it. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
and I don't think I'm not going to say it's a requirement, but it sure is a nice bonus for relationship building. And even during the pandemic, when we're all sick of Zoom sessions, trust me, a Zoom session is better than not being able to see a visual cue or, just, I don't know, have that back and forth connection.
Yeah, it can make a big difference. It really can. So I think next on our list, we had always record at the highest quality levels possible within reason.
Yes.
Right. So for instance, within reason would be like 48K, 32-bit or 24-bit, something like that. But what you want to do is when you record, you want to save that as a raw file. What I do is I actually put the word raw at the end of that file when I'm saving it. Okay. Then what I'll do is I will immediately save it again as the original name of the project. So that way, if anything ever goes wrong, like computer crashes, it dies, whatever, that raw file is always there.
Yep. Now, and you have the original to go back to. So important. Like it's immediate. Like I open and then save a backup.
Yep. And you were talking about cloud storage earlier.
Yes.
So what I like to do is this, and I think you do it a little bit differently, but and I guess we can both talk about how it is that we go about doing this, but I will keep that raw file local until I am actually paid for that project. And then I will delete the raw file, and then I will take the finished project and I will upload that to the cloud. But I think that you actually upload the raw to the cloud as well. Is that right?
Well, I just as a backup. So for my client, I save the raw file locally, and then I have an automatic backup, which backs up my entire drive to the cloud.
Synced. You're synced to the cloud already.
I'm synced to the cloud. I have a backup software that backs up to the cloud. I also have, not only do I have a backup to the cloud, but I have a backup that goes to another local disk. I have mirrored disks. So that means I'm always working on an external drive or the cloud. I'm not working on my main computer space, because there's so many times when my computer just, if something goes wrong and I've got to reformat or reload the operating system, then I don't have to worry that I've lost any work. So
well, that's a really good tip that we're kind of watershedding here a little bit, because you just made me think of something that's very important, and that is that you should have exterior drives hooked to your computer whenever possible. Now, in your configuration, what you just talked about, the backup, the mirroring, is what's called a RAID setup, right? So it's a RAID mirror, right?
Do you know what? I do it so simple. Like, yes, I understand a RAID setup, and it used to be a thing. Like when I worked in IT, and we would have RAID systems, and we would have automated backups that would happen incrementally and full backups. But mine is super simple. Mine is I I have one of those lacy external drives, which I love, that I have on my Apple, and I bought 2 of them. So literally all of my work, no matter what I do, goes on that external drive. And then I have a very simple piece of software called Sync that basically syncs the 2 disks together. And it's simple as that. It's the oldest software in the world. It's free, but it works, and it simply just mirrors my drive. And I also have a backup software that that automatically backs up to the cloud. So I really have 2 backups, so I'm never without my work.
That's awesome. Well, I know that we keep talking about Macs here, and I know we're not losing half of our audience by doing that, but since
you can do the same thing with a PC,
yeah, you could.
It's very simple.
But no, definitely. But one of the things I wanted to say about backups is Time Machine, which is a program inside of the Mac, which is awesome. Definitely do Time Machine backups on your external drives. And also the external drive is great for handling your actual files versus keeping them on your local drive, because if you let your local drive do the job of running the software and you let that external drive do the job of carrying and processing that audio, your system is going to run much smoother.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Not only that, but if you do have all of your files on that external drive, well, now you can take your laptop and everything that you have that you need to work on, edit, etc., on the road instead of your entire computer.
Absolutely.
Right? And you don't have to worry about, yeah, exactly. I do the same exact thing. And now the idea behind having the external drive process your audio, there's this thing known as caching, right? So CACHE. And basically that's just this temporary area for the software to store the files or record them, et cetera, because we don't really think about this. Well, while we're recording right now, since it's not an actual file yet, we haven't saved it, where's it being recorded? Where's it being stored, et cetera, right? So in these areas, in these cache areas, if you don't know about anything about that, just look it up on Google, for like Audacity or Audition and cache files, et cetera, because it will run a lot smoother and your system will be more stable.
Yeah.
Okay. So external drives are huge.
And quick point back to that raw file that we're saving, the raw audio file. I cannot tell you how many times a customer or a client has come back to me, maybe a year or 2 later, and asked me to do another take on something, or they're going to add to the material. And so they need me to do the job again. So I need to go back to the original raw file that I have. It definitely helps me to understand where I was, what equipment. And by the way, when you're naming those files, right, you should name the file with the type of equipment that you used as well in the file. Besides raw, it might be like your 416, or did you use your TLM 103? That will help you to remember in case you have to go back to that file and then do a pickup or do some new stuff. So.
And the same should be said for creating presets. If you're creating an effects rack specifically for a certain job, what I do is I keep a Word document in the file there. If I changed anything, like when I introduced the Nissan Rogue, they had me on a different mic and I was doing a different type of read, a completely different thing than I normally do. And so I had to take notes because I was using different EQ and different mic and all that kind of stuff. And they took the 3 that I did and they did a split into 5. So I had to do some pickup work. And so thankfully when I did it, I was able to go back to my notes, see exactly what I did, send it into them. And they said, my God, it fit right in there. It sounds like the original session. I go, well, yeah, I'm good at duplicating myself or whatever, doing an impression of myself is what I said. But anyway, to come full circle, the reason that you want to record at the highest quality level possible is because when you're exporting, if you do export into an MP3 format or whatever, that's fine. But what if the client got it wrong, for instance, and said, well, actually, I just talked to the producer and they need it at 48K? Because a lot of video game videographers, et cetera, they have this idea that 48K is just, so much better than 44.1. And so you don't want to be in a situation.
And you can't go backwards, right? You can't save it as 44 and then try to produce, you know what I mean? It just save it at the very highest. Yep.
Yeah. And I've seen it online where people are like, well, just upsample it. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. No. And they can definitely tell. You can't just take an MP3 and then just, upgrade it to 48K. It doesn't work. Right. So, anyway, just to come full circle on that, why you would want to record at the highest level possible. That's why. And that's what you want your raw file to be. So is it going to take up more space? Yeah.
Yes.
Might it save your butt? Has it saved my butt and lots of other people's butts?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And space is so darn cheap these days. And speaking of being, coming back to a project a couple years later, I think that you have to be hyper aware of when you're recording audio. And this is not, okay, so we're thinking of these audio tips. Yeah, this is also a performance tip as it relates to your audio. Be aware of your mental state, your physical state. Are you tired? Are you stressed? Or are you happy or whatever it is while you're recording your audio? And I'm sure I'm not the only person that's going to say this, but I've been in the studio recording something and then the next day I'll listen to what I recorded and I'll be like, what? Like you have
what was I thinking?
What was I thinking? Yeah. Like I could have sworn that sounded so great when I recorded it. But then if I'm overtired, a lot of times that affects our performance. It affects our voice. When we're stressed, our pitch tends to go up and register higher. So be very aware of, and I think that the way to get to know yourself and get to know your body is to just continually change times that you're recording. If you have that luxury, if you can record in the morning, how are you in the morning? If you record late at night, are you better at night? Get to know yourself and your body so you know how your recording sounds and your audio sounds.
Yeah, and have a ritual in place. So whether that is stretching or breathing or humming in the morning, that's one of the things that I do in order to get my
I breathe
in order to get my voice. Yeah, I need in the morning. My voice is extremely deep. It's too deep. And so I need to.
No.
Yeah. Everyone has that, right? When they wake up in the morning, their voice is just, down here, right? So what I'll
mine's
do
not
is,
quite that low.
Yeah. So I'll do my, exercises, etc. And I go through my ritual and, slap myself in the face a few times, whatever it takes, right? To get yourself prepared so that you are in tip-top shape. And part of being in tip-top shape, by the way, is making sure that you are hydrated. And being hydrated is not, okay, let me go grab some water real quick and before I voice. That's not how it works. Your body takes time to absorb that water or Gatorade or whatever it is. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
It takes a very
hours
long time.
Or, a day, overnight sometimes.
Right, et cetera. And so, people have a lot of problem with mouth noise, and a lot of times it comes down to them not being hydrated, and they're saying, well, I drink plenty of water when I'm voicing. It's like, well, that's not going to get it done.
Drink it before you voice and drink it after you voice and just continually drink. So
Yep.
Good stuff.
And it's good for you anyway.
That's right.
Drinking water, is good for you anyway. So, yeah. There you go.
Wow, Tim. That was an amazing set of tips.
Well, they were tips.
They were tips.
I hope they help people. That's the whole idea here.
Yeah, guys, let's use these tips if you can for, making your business better, become a stronger performer, and have a really kick butt 2021 because, we're all looking forward to that. That
Absolutely.
Is for sure.
Yes, please. 2021 cannot come soon enough.
Yes.
2020, goodbye.
Yeah. Well, Tim, it's been amazing. And I'm going to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL, that has allowed me to connect with you and really have this wonderful discussion about these amazing tips for really improving your performance and your audio for 2021 and beyond. So thanks so much to IPDTL. If you'd like to find out more, you can check them out at ipdtl.com. You guys have an amazing week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.
See you guys.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your host, Ann Ganguzza. And take your business to the next level. Sign up for our mailing list at voboss.com and receive exclusive content, industry revolutionizing tips and strategies, and new ways to rock your business like a boss. Redistribution with permission, coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.